So you want to know where to live in Seattle. Maybe you're moving to Seattle for a job, maybe you're transferring within the Puget Sound area. Seattle has been a hot real estate market and a hot destination for decades. We are going through the best places to live in Seattle. This is the urban edition. We're going to be sticking to neighborhoods that are actually within the city of Seattle. The greater Seattle area encompasses other cities like Bellevue, Everett, Federal Way down to Tacoma. It's a large urban area. We're just going to be focusing on where to live in the city of Seattle. So we'll talk about neighborhoods rather than suburbs. These are all going to be urban locations. Stay with me to get to know the different neighborhoods in Seattle that are going to be a best fit for you, or maybe none of them, and we'll take you outside of Seattle on some of our other videos. So in case this is your first time watching, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am a Seattle native. I am an active real estate broker here in the Seattle area, and I love introducing people to the area, trying to help you as someone who's thinking about relocating here, find out what neighborhoods will and will not be a good fit for you, so that when you come to town to take a look at houses, you can hit the ground running, knowing exactly where to start. It would help me out a lot if you would like and subscribe, mash the bell, as they say in the South. Mash that bell, sugar. To make sure that you can stay connected when we publish other videos. We are trying to put out a lot of content here so that you can dive deep into the long tail of the different neighborhoods that you're most interested in. Today we are starting with the urban Seattle city. Where within Seattle would you like to live, or maybe nowhere at all? Let's get started. Okay, the first area that I'd like to highlight is downtown Seattle. So downtown is where all the skyscrapers are. You may have seen aerial pictures of Seattle zooming around. The big buildings at night are downtown Seattle. Adjacent is the Space Needle. Now, downtown Seattle is on the water. We are on Puget Sound, and the whole thing is basically a big steep hill going down toward the water. So if you live in this area, it's urban, it's walkable, but there are a lot of hills, so don't worry. Your legs are gonna look amazing as you walk and shop. Now, historically, living in downtown Seattle, and by this I'm just gonna say pre-2019, we all know what I'm talking about there. Living in Seattle downtown was a hot ticket because the commute here is not very good. And so people wanted to be close to work. They could live in a small apartment or condo, walk to work, walk to groceries, shopping, have their little dog, take their little dog to work. It was all there within a few blocks radius, which was fantastic. Now, in the times that came after that, what we have seen is an interesting demographic shift. The downtown area has actually been falling in popularity because when people have been working remotely, it's no longer as desirable to be so close to work in a tiny apartment or a condo. Most people are looking for more space at their home, and they are not going into work as much. Now, I'm hopeful, optimistic, what more can I cross here, that things will go back to normal and people will be able to start going regularly into the office again. And as that happens, I expect the downtown Seattle market to shoot right up. But at the moment, that is not the case. If you want to live downtown, you can buy a awesome penthouse type condo on the top of a high new building for maybe $2 million. It may come with a parking spot or two. You can buy a smaller studio, one bedroom, 500 square foot type of condo, a new construction, for about $500,000. And if you want something less than that, you can certainly get a condo for $300,000, but it may not be right in that downtown core. Now, as I alluded to, parking is at a premium here. It is expensive to park cars, and just because you have a house or a condo does not mean that it will automatically come with a parking spot. People get around that by walking places, biking places, using an Uber or Lyft, using a rental car for when they need to get around, or paying a premium for a parking spot. You may be able to rent one in your building if it's not deeded to your unit, or you may be able to rent one in a nearby office or parking lot on the surface, maybe for $300 a month. So just think about what you want to do with that, factor that in. One concern, as I point out, especially for people who might not want to be walking in urban areas at night, is just when you will be using that car. It does get dark here in the winter, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, it's dark. So just use caution, use your wits. Again, going back to kind of the trends that we've been seeing lately with the downtown population, it's been fewer workers and more indigent people, homeless people, more drug problems, more crime. That is more the element that's come into the city as there are fewer workers and day-to-day people out on the streets. So I would not recommend that you buy anything in downtown Seattle sight unseen without doing a thorough taking your time to spend some time on nights and weekends in the downtown area. So that being said, let's move on to our next adjacent area, which is the Capitol Hill, and it's called First Hill, which is just south of Capitol Hill. These have historically been walkable. Well, they're still walkable to downtown, so they've been desirable in that regard. Capitol Hill actually runs along the I-5 freeway, and then it has its own main north-south street there called Broadway. When I was in high school, Broadway was kind of the cool, hip place to go hang out. I wouldn't go there alone, but I was with a group of friends, which included both male and female friends, and we never had any problems. My curfew was at 11, so I was out of there before things got too crazy. But in terms of nightlife, there's still a lot going on, but it is still a very urban feel, and there are all types of people there. So you just really need to keep your wits about you and stay on point. If you like the idea of being able to walk to the city, if you like the idea of being in a building where you can enjoy views of the city, this was very important to one of my clients. So we started off looking in Capitol Hill so they could look back onto the city and see the beautiful buildings. So those are some options there. You can get into something affordable like a one-bedroom. I looked at a one-bedroom there that's been for sale. It's being used as an Airbnb. It only cost $300,000 plus HOA dues and that type of thing. So Capitol Hill is trendy, nightlife type of stuff, good views of the city. And then First Hill, a little bit to the south, is it's maybe across from Pioneer Square. If you're kind of the south end of downtown Seattle, Pioneer Square is that historic area near the stadiums. It has underground Seattle tours. It has the big totem pole and the kind of historic red and blue building. That's actually where my dad's first law office was, down at that historic building down there. So that's a cool area, but it does have a lot of homeless people that hang out there on a regular basis. First Hill is popular because it's close to the hospitals. I've also heard this area called Pill Hill, which is not actually a drug using reference. It's because the pill prescribers, the doctors, are all in that area. So we have Harborview Hospital, Virginia Mason Hospital, lots of sports medicine clinics and that type of a thing. So there are actually a lot of people who want to be in this area who are maybe doctors and nurses. The Airbnb that I referenced earlier would be rented out to people who are like visiting nurses, traveling nurses, interns at the hospitals who wanted to stay for maybe 3 to 6 months, that type of a thing. So from an investment standpoint, as well as a residential standpoint, that's a great location for hospital access. Parking is still a challenge, as is other urban population issues. As far as Capitol Hill goes, it's really a mix. There are a lot of apartments. There are a lot of apartments turned condos, so you can now like own your unit, or a co-op in some cases. And there are a lot of amazing older homes that are big, like Victorian style homes. Some of them are mansions where one family lives. Some of them have been converted into a 3 or 4 family situation. Some are rented by the room, so you might have 7 to 8 people there. But there are some really nice houses. And one of the guys that I used to hang out with when I went there at Capitol Hill, his dad lived there. He was a dermatologist, right? So it's a real mix, a real eclectic type of population there. There are a lot of restaurants, movie theaters, edgy, like artsy movie theaters and places like that. Beautiful churches. There's a park with a conservatory where they have orchids. My sister went there to this park for her wedding photos. I mean, there are some great locations. There are some places to get away from it all, but there are also urban things. So it's just like a block by block situation where you want to be if you decide you want to be up there. Now in First Hill, there's actually a lot of newer construction going on. If you drive down there, you'll see new buildings popping up, and that's also where the fairly new South Lake Union trolley tracks are going. Now, the South Lake Union trolley is a bit of a joke due to its unfortunate acronym. You can figure that out, South Lake Union trolley. So that runs through there, and it's also fairly close to the freeway. So during rush hour, there can be congestion on the streets as far as people trying to get onto the freeway in that location. But newer buildings, condos primarily, and schools, buses, trolley, freeway. One last thing I'll mention, just because it was kind of our claim to fame during 2020, Capitol Hill it's a fairly politically active area, and as you may have heard, the politics in Seattle tend to lean left. So Capitol Hill was the location of the famous Chaz/CHOP zone. This was the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, where the streets were barricaded off. The mayor called it the Summer of Love. Unfortunately, there was crime being committed because they were not allowing police and aid units to enter this area. Some buildings were burned, some things happened. So you got to be ready for that. I mean, there's a lot of action in this area, and when things get tense politically in Seattle, which they have before in the past, I remember there have been, you know, I won't call them riots, I'll call them protests and marches and all that sort of thing. Oftentimes, Capitol Hill is a hotbed of this type of activity. So if you want to join in on that, fantastic. That's going to be a good place for you. If that scares the bejesus out of you, then that's probably not a good place to be making as your home base. Okay, now let's switch gears away from Capitol Hill and First Hill and take a look at Queen Anne. So Queen Anne, as the name might suggest, has a lot of older, beautiful Victorian homes. This is Queen Anne Hill. It's up on a hill. You can recognize it because there's a big radio antenna up there, and they have great views of downtown Seattle and the water in Puget Sound. So this is one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Seattle, and it's very well thought of. It has a lot of nice older Victorian homes, as well as some of the oldest apartment buildings, and some of them are condos now. So I love to go there to take walks, to look at the old homes. There's a park, you can overlook the city. I went there to take pictures. Of course, it was a foggy day, but it's a fun place to go, and tasteful. It's a huge hill. So when you're driving down the hill into downtown Seattle, it literally feels like the street is about a 45-degree angle. Not one for ice, but there's a Whole Foods market, I think, right there. And then you're right into the downtown area. So this is a very close location, right by Lake Union. It's north of Seattle. So very popular, but still urban and short commute, nice older homes, as well as converted apartments and that type of thing. I will say, when I first got my real estate license in 2008, I did a lot with apartment research, and one of the things that I was focused on is apartment buildings in Queen Anne. If you want to be in this area and you can't afford to buy, renting is a lot cheaper than buying, and there are nice apartments here. The key thing is proximity to the city and potentially views as well. If you want to buy, which you want to in Seattle, eventually you do want to buy, you know, condos are the next cheapest thing, and then houses after that. So a lot of people find that they want to buy something to take advantage of our growing market, but it's hard to get their foot in the door with the big house that they want. So focusing on maybe a condo as a stepping stone into something else is a good option if you find yourself in that situation. Now we're going to talk about Belltown briefly, which is like a hip hipster, I don't know, hip and hipster, kind of the same thing, yo-yo. I'm not hip at all. So this is kind of a place known for dance clubs. It's a little bit north of the downtown area, and there are a lot of people who want to live here to be close to dance clubs and close to bars. I can't give any demographic information because that would be against fair housing, but you can imagine who that population might want to be. It's a great place if you like to party, and a lot of people like to be able to live there so that if they're out partying, then they can just walk home or take a taxi or Uber, and it's nice and close. Now we're going to go to South Lake Union. South Lake Union is where Amazon is. Google has an office here. There's the Museum of History and Industry, which is easy to see. It's like a white square naval looking building. And this has become a bonkers, really popular area since Amazon started leasing so much office space here and Google built its own headquarters here. It's just become a real tech job hub. And so living around here has become a great thing for people who work at those offices and of course anybody else who wants to. I was out looking at a guy's condo who lives there. He has a great view of Lake Union. He calls it the party deck, where everyone goes out when they're doing like 4th of July, fireworks on the lake and everything. And so he has parties out there. Anyway, he referred to his street as Amazon Row because he, in his opinion, a lot of people who are living there now are living there because of the proximity to Amazon. Now, again, you know, that has changed with a lot of people working from home lately and not feeling as strong a need to live close to downtown. But as things change and go back to normal, I expect this again to be a very popular area. And even if you're not needing to go into work every day, a lot of people still like to have that proximity to the office. They like the energy of the city. They like the views of the lake. And, you know, you can get a boat, you can rent a boat, you can buy a boat, you can sail in Lake Union, you can go out to Puget Sound. So if you like water sports, there are a lot of options here in the South Lake Union area. Personally, what we like to do is rent a kayak, and we can go around to Gasworks Park and just paddle. You know, we don't go for more than an hour usually. We take the kids and we don't want their arms to get tired, but there are a lot of houseboats, scuba diving classes, just a lot of interesting things to see out there. So we enjoy getting out on the lake in an affordable way as the mood strikes us. If you like to walk, there's also a walking trail around Lake Union that you can walk, you can bike. So a lot of times when I'm out there during the day, like on a business day, I'll see people on their phones, like taking a business meeting or being on a call while they're also out enjoying some fresh air. And, you know, when it's a sunny day in Seattle, everybody's got to roll up their sleeves and get out and soak it in. So we try to do that. And if you can do it while you're working, mwah, so much the better. Kudos to you. So the Central District is the next neighborhood that I want to talk about. And as you can imagine, it's pretty centrally located. It's a little bit south of the downtown area and toward Lake Washington to the east. And this is definitely an up and coming area. I have a client recently who was looking for homes there. And unfortunately, she actually got priced out. She had lived there for a long time. She grew up in that area. But there's a lot of development going on there now, lots of townhomes and that type of a thing, because this area is going to have great access to both Seattle and Bellevue and light rail stations. In fact, I always like to chat with the neighbors, you know, get the lowdown on what's going on that street. Is there any crime problems? Are the neighbors friendly? What's going on? So chatted with a lady who was out walking her dog at these new townhomes that were being built, and she was explaining how the light rail was coming and they were going to be, 10 minutes walk to the light rail to get to Bellevue, as well as being able to access downtown Seattle. So that was great. This historically has not been a super fancy area. The Central District has even like warehouses and some industrial manufacturing type stuff. And in fact, when I was getting off the freeway to go and visit my client, I saw the old Oh Boy Oberto sausage factory. And I don't know if you're a big fan of salami or beef jerky or anything like that, but here in Seattle, the grocery stores, when you go to those aisles, you'll see the brand Oh Boy Oberto. And the Oberto family were Italian immigrants who came to this area, had their own kind of recipes for how to make these different sausages and meat products, and begin manufacturing them. And they had a facility there in the Central District. And as the business grew, I mean, they amassed a large amount of wealth. I actually went to school with their granddaughter. And so anyway, they were a wealthy family, and they would have these block parties. My client was telling me about how in the summer, like, they would get out the music and everyone would come to these Oh Boy Oberto block parties, and they were a great community event. And the family, in fact, did a lot of other things to to support the neighborhood. So one of the things I remember them doing was that they sponsored these what are they called? Hydroplane races. So in the summer in Seattle, there's a month or so of festivities called Seafair. And this is where we have parades and 5K runs. The Blue Angels will come from the Navy and do a flyover. And another thing that happens is they have hydroplane races, which are very lightweight boats. They kind of race along the top of the water. They're very fast, high-speed boats, and occasionally they flip over and, spiral out of control. And that's exciting for the observers, not probably so much for the drivers. But anyway, there are some local companies who sponsor these things, and one of the materials that they use in the boats is like a honeycomb foam that fits together. It's very strong and it's very lightweight. So when Cindy Oberto and I were in math class together in high school, she brought in a sample of this material with hexagons on it, and we ended up doing our geometry project on hexagons because geometrically speaking, it's very beautiful, very functional shapes, same shape that we see in honeycomb. So I'm a beekeeper, and that it all came back to me there. So anyway, the Oberto family was fantastic. They were based in the Central District. Their factory is now closed down, and I would say the landscape of the area is changing to be more like high-rise townhomes, new construction, that type of a thing. There's just not a lot of land left in Seattle, so a lot of the less expensive areas that were not being utilized for retail are now being repurposed for residential, and a lot of these buildings will even have apartments or condos in the upstairs story and retail shopping down below so that people can come through and shop and be out on the streets and that type of thing, while still having residences in the area, just because we're packing in the people as closely as we can these days. So that's the Central District. Make sure you check it out. It's very hip and up and coming, I would say. The next area I want to highlight is West Seattle. Now, West Seattle is on the west side of Seattle, which is where Puget Sound is. So it's a saltwater beach front area. And Alki Beach is one of my favorite places to be in West Seattle because there's a beautiful boardwalk. It's a couple miles long. It's paved, but you can walk along there. There are not condos. There are actually condos on the other side of the beach, so you could live there and have a beautiful waterfront view. But what I was going to say is that there are bicycles to rent, canoes to rent, and that type of a thing to help you get out and access the water. As I found on my walk, there are fabulous blackberry bushes there too, and I actually filmed some stuff on this beach. So get out there onto the beach. It's a wonderful beach. They have Salty's on Alki, which is a fabulous restaurant. This is a place that my uncle actually went for his retirement party. And one of the nice things about being in West Seattle is that it points to, or has good views of, downtown Seattle. So you can be in this restaurant, and we were there at night. The lights are down. You see the city lights of Seattle, and you see the ocean and the boats and that type of a thing. So it's really a special place to be. There's a lighthouse. And interestingly, there's also a ferry. So there's the Fauntleroy Ferry, which is run by the local government. There's also what's called a water taxi, it's like a bus, but it's just for pedestrians. It takes people back and forth to downtown Seattle. I believe a trip is $5 or something. So if you want to go into the city for work, a doctor's appointment, so go see a play or a show or something, you can take this $5 boat trip into Seattle, not have to deal with parking your car once you get downtown, and just enjoy some of the things that the city has to offer, and then come back to presumably your home in West Seattle. Commute-wise, West Seattle has been a little bit more difficult to access downtown. They used to have a main road called the West Seattle Bridge that has been down and decommissioned for repairs, the earthquake retrofitting and that type of a thing. And so now it sounds like, they keep telling us they're going to be bringing that back on board, which will help ease the commute. But for now, people are having to go on surface streets, which are just a little slower. So even though it looks close on the map, people say it can take, half an hour to an hour to get into downtown Seattle during rush hour. So just something to be aware of there. The homes themselves, I would say West Seattle has a bit of a hip, eclectic vibe, a lot of sort of artsy things, older homes, a lot of character in the community, and some great areas to enjoy out there in West Seattle. The guy that I met while I was out there had his, you know, cool fedora hat on at a jaunty angle, you know, that type of an artisan vibe. There's a huge park along the water again called Lincoln Park, and this is a wonderful place. When I was there over the summer, I parked. I saw people like coming back with strings of fish that they had pulled out of the ocean, and so there's fishing down there. There's a pool down there. There's a playground down there, and just more beach access. But my most notable memories myself of Lincoln Park were sort of the forest. There's a lot of woods, there's some green grassy areas, and some big trees. And this is actually where I ran cross country in high school. This was one of the places where we would have our meets. And it was also one of the places where I would get lost during the meets at the end of the school year. I remember one year my team jokingly awarded me a compass because I had gotten lost in Lincoln Park and ended up following the wrong chalk trail. I think the park had been marked for a different run, but not our run. And so I got a little bit off pace and came jumping out through the bushes. My coach was like, "Cunningham, what are you doing here? You already passed this checkpoint." I was like, "Oh gosh, well, you know, I saw some members of my team that were behind me and decided to rejoin the pack, the herd, as it were. Don't want to be in the woods by yourself, getting lost." So when the clock is running. So anyway, West Seattle has some really beautiful outdoor places, some really nice homes, and people who live in West Seattle really seem to love it. I think it's just a little bit less accessible to areas outside of West Seattle, so that's something to be aware of there. Okay, next on the hit list of awesome places to live in Seattle if you're wanting a more urban experience, we're going to touch on Green Lake and Phinney Ridge. So Green Lake is it was actually, as a kid, we would go there almost every week in the summer. And as the name implies, it's a lake. It's a pretty urban location lake with a very flat walking trail. It's about 3 miles, a little less than 3 miles around the lake. And in Seattle, people love this because there's so many hills and roads and other places that are an effort to go on a walk through. So when we find a place that's flat and there's no traffic running us off the road, it really attracts people. Green Lake has fabulous scenery, but it's so crowded that it's really more of a people watching and dog watching place. This is not a place that you're going to be alone in nature. This is where you're going to be out showing off your cute jogging clothes. And they actually have very interesting people there. I mean, there are people who are roller skate around the whole thing, and they're cool, sexy, like retro 70s roller skating outfits, in my opinion. There was a guy, I haven't seen him in a while, but he was a Spanish language teacher. He would wear a sandwich board saying, you know, like Spanish lessons, $10 an hour or something like that. And he would basically just walk around the lake with you, hablando español, and you would learn and walk at the same time. He didn't have to pay for advertising. He didn't have to pay for an office. He would get his exercise, and you would get to practice your Spanish with him. So that, I thought, was a cool business idea. There are tons and tons of dog walkers. So if you have a dog, you will see lots of other dogs. It's a great place to you know, see all the different breeds and try to identify. I was a kind of a dog nerd when I was a kid. I really wanted a dog, so I memorized all the different breeds, and I would like, oh, you know, it's an Italian Greyhound. Oh, you know, it's a Bernese Mountain Dog, that kind of a thing. It was fun to do at Green Lake. And they also have water sports and activities. So some people who live in the area will actually bring like a wetsuit or even a dry suit and go swimming in the water on a regular basis, even throughout some of the colder months of the year. In the summer, they have a protected beach area. It's cordoned off, and there's a lifeguard on duty, so you can bring the kids and have them go swimming. A lot of dogs will go play fetch in the water, and then they have rowboats and crew. So if my brother-in-law was a competitive rower in college, and so one of the things that he does occasionally is join in with like an adult rowing league, and they'll have races. They have mostly crew races, but they also have something called dragon boats, which is more of an overhand rowing. And crew is where you pull it back. It's like canoeing versus rowboat. So you can rent paddle boats, which are the ones that you bicycle with your feet. And so in the summer, this is a really attractive place for kids and families. Little 3-year-old kids will be like whipping around on their bikes. People will be bringing wagons. There are mothers groups that do, you stroller your baby for 10 minutes and then you stop and do push-ups and exercise, and then you stroller your baby again. So it's really a hub of activity, college joggers, high school joggers, that type of a thing here around Green Lake. And then there's even a wading pool, which was another thing that I really liked when I was a kid. Now they actually empty it out and refill it every day. They give it some chemical treatment to keep it, germ-free and that type of a thing. But in the summer, they fill this up about a foot of water, and lots of little kids come and play. So that's a huge attraction too. Anyway, I'm really passionate about Green Lake. I love Green Lake. And around the perimeter are a lot of fun shopping areas, like go get ice cream, go get coffee, there's like a hot chocolate store, some Mexican food restaurants, Chowder House, Spuds, fish and chips, those types of things. My grandparents actually built the Hearthstone retirement home, which is there. So if you're more retirement age, that's a fantastic place to live. And then you can come out and walk and be in the mix and have all of those social connections there. And anyway, so shopping, retail, pretty high density area, but whether or not you live there, you can always come and enjoy the lake itself, which I really recommend. Around it are parks. There's baseball field, soccer field. There's the, what's it called? Upper Woodland Park, which is another place that we ran cross country, and another place that I got lost. But some large parks. And then on the other side of that is the Woodland Park Zoo, which is fantastic because the animals are amazing. This was one of the first zoos where they really had a focus on creating natural habitats. So when you go to look at the zoo, you're not just seeing animals in a cage, you're seeing an African savanna with plants and giraffes, and it really looks like you're out looking at Africa. They have children's camps. I remember when I was a kid, I would go there and you got to go like behind the scenes and see the giant giraffe barns, which are so tall because the giraffes are so tall. We got to go behind the scenes with the snakes and kind of see how they feed them and take care of all the different animals. So anyway, the zoo is a fantastic resource. It can be a little bit expensive to go to. If you just buy yourself a ticket, it's fairly pricey. You can get a membership, which if you have young kids and live nearby, I would really recommend. The zoo is almost an attraction for walkers as well. You can come with your stroller and your kids. Your kids can run around off leash. There's no traffic. I said it. And so there's a lot to see. It's always changing, and it's a really big acreage. So you get a lot of exercise, kill a lot of time, which when we're entertaining little kids is really the name of the game. So I love the Woodland Park Zoo, and the Green Lake area just has a lot of energy and a lot of activity. Is great bus access. It's right on like Highway 99, also very close to I-5, just north of downtown. So it's a great place to live and then commute into the city. Finney Ridge, same thing, same area. It's just part of the neighborhood. You're up on the ridge a little bit. So take a look at that, especially if you like the idea of some of these outdoor activities. It's very strong demand consistently, both from living there as a tenant or as an owner-occupant. Zipping right along, we've got Freemont, Wallingford. This is kind of a place my grandma used to take us on special occasions because it was cool and hip. There was this restaurant called Julia's 14 Carat, which was a brunch spot, and they would pack this, pack the restaurant, tiny little restaurant. People would line up out into the streets to come here for brunch on the weekends. It had a hip, artsy vibe. My husband actually used to work in this area, and so we would go out for lunch sometimes. I would come down and meet him there for lunch. We'd sit outside on the cafe street. There was a little Greek restaurant there, and they have statues and different art all around. They have the troll under the bridge, which has been a popular tourist destination since probably the 60s. They have another statue called Waiting for the Interurban, which is people like bundled up waiting for some train or bus that's never going to come. And it's funny because the locals like to decorate the statue. So they'll come out and they'll give the people who are cold an extra scarf or a hat. Or if it's New Year's, they'll get like New Year's decorations and streamers and party hats, or, you know, Seahawks, different holidays, they might get costumes. So it's a fun kind of community focused area. And they used to run tourists through here. So there was a ride called Ride the Ducks, which was kind of a truck. It was a truck that was amphibious, so it could also drive into the water and become a boat. It has since been disbanded because they had a little traffic accident on the freeway that was not so good. So they're not doing that anymore, but when they did, they would come by and we could hear them like announcing to all the tourists all the fun things that there were to see in this area. There's also a drawbridge that opens and closes. And so you're on the water, you can see boats. It is a fun place to take out of town guests, walk around. They have a farmer's market. They have, what else do they have? Art studios, lofts, that type of thing, manufacturing. There are still urban influences here. I had a friend who lived in this area with her young son, and she said, you know, occasionally neighbors would all call each other and say like, watch out, there's a guy with a machete like wandering around on the street. And so, you know, she didn't have any like direct confrontation problems, but at the same time, if you have a child that's trying to like, you know, play marbles in the front yard or something, you don't really want that type of thing to be happening. So be on point, enjoy it if you're open to that. And if you are, again, not open to that, then you might want to move further out from the downtown area of Seattle. Magnolia is nearby. Magnolia is out on the bluff. It's close to Queen Anne, Wallingford, and Freemont. And the bluff is fantastic, high-end, hoity-toity. I have a friend from high school who loves jogging, and she can actually jog in from this area into like the Amazon area. I don't know that I would be up for walking or jogging that far, but she does it. She's also like a college athlete, so it can be done if that's your bag. But there are great jogging and walking trails along the bluff, and there's a huge park called Discovery Park, which again is a place that I like to go visit with my family. I take my kids, we spend 2 or 3 hours walking around. The thing that I like about this park is you can walk through all different kinds of terrain. You can walk through the woods, you can walk through grassy fields, you can walk down a steep hill and you get to the beach. There's a beach down there and the lighthouse. There are some historical naval buildings and the lighthouse building and that type of a thing. So there's a lot to see. It's a very interesting, like always changing type of environment to spend time. So it's a lot less repetitive than some walks where you're just in the woods all the time. So if you are in the area and you need a little exercise, definitely check out Discovery Park. There's a lot going on there and it's a lot of fun. However, in Magnolia, housing is pricey because of the downtown access and the great views. I was just looking, I get some off-market leads from an investor in the area. He sent me one that was about $1 million. It was a 3-bedroom fixer-upper type of property, and he said that was the cheapest thing that was currently on the market in Magnolia. So I double-checked him, and that's about right. That's about the starting place for homes in the Magnolia area. So just, you know, watch your budget before you fall in love with it. Now I'm going to talk about Ballard, which I feel sad, a little bit sad about. So Ballard has been, there's a lot of change I am noticing in the theme of my comments. What was and what is, it's kind of evolving. But the history of Ballard was that it was a Norwegian fishing village type of area. A lot of Norwegian settlers came here who made their living on the sea. They wanted to be close to Puget Sound. They would go boating, they would fish locally, and a lot of the boats from the Puget Sound actually go up to Alaska and do fishing during various fishing seasons, salmon season, crab season. The way it works is that it's profitable and you fish as much as you can during the certain time of year, and then you have to stop and there's no more fishing. So then you can come back home and park your boat and live in the nice relative comfort of the Seattle environment rather than Alaska, right? So There were a lot of older homes. This is actually where my parents had their first apartment building. It was a 16 unit, and they bought it with friends from church, and they renovated each little unit as it turned, and they made it nicer, and they actually had to sell it after just 2 years because they were changing some regulations about needing fire sprinkler system in the building, and they didn't want to put that money in. They probably didn't have that money to put that in, so they had to sell it to someone else who would be in a position to do that as the law changed. Anyway, they ended up doing great on it, making good money on it, and just that short-term hold. But sometimes I'm like, oh, if only they still had the building. It would be worth so much more now. Ballard High School is right there in downtown Ballard, and this is where my sister bought her first house when she finished law school. A lot of lawyers in my family. She finished law school. She bought a townhouse down there, and she bought it right at the peak of the market in 2007. And then, like, boom, the market crashed and everything tanked, and she just held on to it. And I think she ended up living there for about, I want to say, 5 years or so before she sold it. And I, at the same time, was living in Linwood, way out in the boonies in Snohomish County. And I owned my house for 10 years. She owned her house for 5 years, including right before the crash. So she bought at the worst possible time. She ended up making more money on her place in that shorter hold time because, like I said, the trend has been closer to Seattle is better due to that appreciation. And we will see. You need to call me and find out what's going on right now, because when you watch this, things will be evolving as they always are. But the trend has not been following that curve. Now we're seeing a lot more appreciation in the outer areas of the city because, again, commuting into town has not been that desirable. And unfortunately, there just seems to be a little bit more crime running rampant in these areas. And by crime, what I mean is kind of like homeless people bumbling around, drug problems. There's just a lot of indigence. In some areas of Seattle, there's prostitution. Car break-ins are common, package thefts are common, that type of a thing. And that's kind of what it was for my sister. She had a young child, and the park next to her house had a lot of RVs parked there with homeless people living in them. So you kind of had to go through this wall of RVs to get to the park. And then there would be like needles and stuff in the park, drug needles that had been discarded. So like the early morning dog walkers were kind of on duty trying to carefully pick up and dispose of that waste so that the children who came to the park later in the day wouldn't happen upon it and, get injured or pick it up or something like that. So the Ballard was the hot address, and it's, in my mind, it's losing some of that luster, but it does have a very cute downtown Main Street area. It has like bars and kind of that nightlife thing, and it's a little bit more removed than Belltown. It's not in the downtown area. It's more, we had a friend in high school who lived there, and she said, you never have to leave Ballard. Everything you need is in Ballard. And Ballard really likes to support its local businesses. In the flux of all this online shopping and that type of a thing, the local businesses are a little harder pressed. What am I trying to say? But the people who live there want these main streets. They like the idea of being able to walk down the road and stop at the bakery, get a coffee, have their hair done, buy a book, buy a loaf of bread from the baker, that type of a thing. So there is that a lot of people who call me about relocating want to have like that walkable Main Street downtown feeling. There is that in Ballard, but we have these other issues to contend with at the moment that are just putting a crunch on that area. If you've made it this far, congratulations, you're doing great. I've got a few more that I'm going to run through, but I wanted to offer to you to talk with you further about any of these areas. If you have like a neighbor or family member that you know that's in an area and you want to be close to them, if you're liking or not liking some of the things that I'm saying, there are always options, there are always changes that are happening. So do reach out, feel free to contact me, and we can go through what it looks like at this day and age, the time that you are watching this video. So now I want to go through the University District. Now this is around the University of Washington, which is really, almost the city unto itself. 46,000 students attend the University of Washington. There's undergrad, there's grad school, there's a hospital, there's a law school, there are big sports teams, and they have a fantastic location on Lake Washington. as well as being right in the middle of the city. If you look at a crime map, however, if we overlay a crime map, you can see that there are a lot of crimes and activities going on here that are not good. So if you're coming to Seattle as a student and you think you might want to live here as a student, I wouldn't necessarily object to that as a parent, but at the same time, you need to be safe, you know, travel in pairs at night and that type of a thing so that you're not taken advantage of. I think anytime that there's a lot of foot traffic in an area, there tends to be, at least in Seattle, like a lot of homelessness, panhandling, that type of a thing going along with that. Rents in this area do tend to be very expensive because a lot of people want to be close to the city, and there are a lot of houses that are rented by the room. So if you're thinking you're getting a great deal on a house in a residential area near the University of Washington, just spend some time there, maybe meet some of the neighbors before you buy and find out if, you know, if it matters to you, like, are these houses being used as boarding houses or are they being used as duplexes or single family homes, or kind of what's the lay of the land as far as the collection of people that live in that area. Again, if that's something that is important to you. I've also seen that they're putting in some pod housing here, which is very tiny apartments where it's really a tiny studio so that you can have lower rent, but you just don't anticipate spending very much time there except to sleep. You know, if you had a dorm room, you'd have a tiny room that you'd share with the roommate. This is a tiny room that you don't share with the roommate. And I'm sure there are community spaces as well as other spaces that you would be off, you know, at campus, on the library, coffee shops, other places. So if you're looking to rent and you're looking for something affordable, look into some pod apartments and see if you can find something cheap in that regard. So from there, kind of north of the University District, the Green Lake area, Freemont and Wallingford, that area to the north is kind of known as North Seattle. It tends to be fairly densely packed. We have Northgate Mall up there, which is the first indoor shopping mall in North America. I don't know if it was built maybe in the 1960s or so. So that's getting really big time renovated. They're basically tearing it down. I was just out there when I got my haircut last weekend. They had the ice arena there. So that's where our professional hockey team, the Kraken, where they practice. So they have a little restaurant and a gallery. You can watch them through these windows as they're practicing every day from 10:30 to 2. You can go eat lunch and watch the practice. At other times when they're not practicing there, it's open for public skate, ice shows, hockey teams, practice, figure skaters, that type of a thing. So there's now an ice skating rink there. There's my real estate office there. And there are still a little bit of shopping. Most importantly, Chipotle is there. That's also going to be one of the big stops for the light rail and the bus. So what they're doing now is, what it looks like to me is, a lot of the buses that pull people in from Snohomish County and north of Seattle are bringing people to this transit hub. And now you have to get out of the bus and transfer onto the train to go down into North Seattle, which in my opinion is not a plus. It's faster just to go on a nonstop bus, but that looks like the direction, at least now when it's a lot less riders. That's how they're routing people to get into Seattle. So beware of that if you're looking for a commute on public transit. North of Seattle, the Seattle City stops at 145th Street, and then from there you cross into Shoreline. The Shoreline area is where I live. It's a fantastic area. We'll do another video on that. They have good school districts, and you will find that like there's this one street called Aurora Avenue. It runs north-south, and when it gets north of Seattle, there's a lot less prostitution going on the street in Shoreline than there is south of Seattle, where there's a lot more prostitution going on in the street. So if you're finding that you're looking in these Seattle neighborhoods and it seems too sketchy for you, there's too much crime, then look elsewhere outside of the city, and I'll do some other videos on that. But I wanted to run you through some of the best, biggest, most popular neighborhoods in the downtown, or in the city of Seattle, I guess, so that you would have an idea of the flavor and where you might want to start your search. And as you go toward the water in general, things tend to be nicer, more expensive. We got views, we got water access, that type of a thing. As you come toward the city, it tends to be a little bit more shady, and other big streets where there's a lot of bus traffic, shopping, foot traffic, that type of a thing. So on the west side, That would be Aurora Avenue, Highway 99, and on the east side, there's like Lake City Way, where we see a lot of that type of thing. So look to my other videos. We'll do other videos diving in on more neighborhoods, but this is a great intro. If you liked any of the videos or any of the cities that I mentioned here, be sure to type in the comments which ones you're looking at, which ones are your favorites. I will try to develop on demand which neighborhoods people are most interested in. So make sure you check out the next videos here. YouTube's going to suggest what they think will be most relevant for you. So again, this is Emily Cressy. I am a licensed real estate broker with Home Smart Real Estate in Seattle. I would love to help you if you're looking to relocate here. And one of my passions is matching you up with the right neighborhood. I'm not a real psychologist. I just play one on TV. And that's how I like to kind of get to know you, find out what you're looking for, talk to you about your budget, and really find a place for you that I think you're going to be happy living your dreams into the future, no matter if that's boating around on the lake, getting your foot in the door with your first condo, walking to downtown Seattle, or enjoying a beautiful view. So thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out the next video, and I'll see you there.